Don't!
You think you can lie to me? After everything, get up!
I swear I didn't.
Drop the gun! Now! Stay back! Put it down! Hands where I can see them!
Please.
Stop right there. You don't belong here. The hallway that Jasmine had walked 1,000 times suddenly felt like a trap. Blood, confusion, and disbelief filled the air as the hospital's CEO raised a weapon. His power absolute, until it wasn't. 5 shots rang out, echoing through the very place she had trusted with her life. Chaos erupted, yet amid the terror, a spark of courage ignited. This is the story of hospital CEO shot the young black nurse 5 times in the hallway, then karma struck hard, a tale of injustice, survival, and shocking accountability. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. It was an ordinary morning at St. Augustine's Hospital. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, and the faint smell of antiseptic clung to the air like an invisible curtain. Jasmine Lewis, a young black nurse in her late 20s, moved with calm efficiency, checking charts, adjusting IVs, and offering quiet reassurance to patients who trusted her with their lives. She had chosen this career not for recognition or fame, but for the deep sense of purpose that came with saving someone's life. Her life outside the hospital was just as disciplined. Jasmine lived in a modest apartment a few blocks away, where she nurtured her plants, read voraciously, and called her mother every evening. She dreamed of one day running her own community clinic, providing care to families who couldn't afford it, a dream she carried quietly like a precious secret. Her colleagues admired her skill and composure, often noting the calm way she navigated chaotic corridors and the warm tone in her voice that seemed to make even the most frightened patients relax. But beneath this normalcy, subtle tensions always lingered. Jasmine noticed the difference in treatment, the dismissive comments that seemed small on their own but accumulated like storm clouds. Sure, doctors barely acknowledged her suggestions, and some administrators seemed irritated when she questioned protocols. It was never overt, never loud enough to be called harassment. But it was enough to remind her that the hospital hierarchy could be unforgiving, and that respect sometimes had invisible barriers. That day, everything seemed routine. Jasmine moved from patient to patient, unaware that the very corridors she navigated with confidence would soon become the stage for an event she couldn't have imagined. The hospital, her second home, held an undercurrent of danger that she couldn't yet perceive. She didn't know that a single moment, a single encounter in these familiar hallways would challenge everything she believed about safety, fairness, and justice. The ordinary morning was about to collapse into a nightmare. And in the blink of an eye, Jasmine's life, her courage, and the fragile sense of security she had built would be tested in ways no one could foresee. The day wore on, and the hospital buzzed with the usual chaos, monitors beeping, patients shifting in their beds, nurses moving at a pace that left little room for error. Jasmine's shift felt longer than usual, her steps faster, her mind juggling patient charts, medication schedules, and post-operative care notes. She noticed again the subtle glances from some of the hospital leadership, looks that carried weight beyond curiosity. One senior administrator barely nodded when she suggested a change to a patient's care plan, brushing off her insight as though it held no value. The slight stung, but Jasmine had learned to mask frustration with a calm smile. By midday, the tension in the hallways began to thicken. Jasmine moved to the surgical recovery wing, where a young patient had just emerged from an emergency procedure. She was meticulous in checking vitals, ensuring that every line was secured correctly, every instruction followed. Her professionalism was undeniable. And yet, across the hallway, Dr. Caldwell, the hospital CEO, walked past with an expression that seemed to harden as he noticed her. She felt his gaze linger, almost like an accusation rather than an observation. Something in the air shifted, an unspoken warning that she couldn't name, but could sense. The afternoon brought more subtle assaults. A colleague who usually collaborated with her ignored her input entirely. A doctor she had assisted on countless occasions questioned her competence in front of a patient's family. Minor, fragmented incidents, each one isolating, each one amplifying the unfairness that Jasmine had grown accustomed to, but never this intensely. It wasn't just stress or fatigue. It was something more sinister, an undercurrent of hostility aimed directly at her because of the color of her skin. By early evening, Jasmine felt a tight knot in her chest. She had finished her rounds and was pushing a cart down the hallway, heading toward the staff lounge. That's when she noticed Dr. Caldwell standing near the elevators, his presence radiating an unmistakable menace. He called her over with a curt wave, and she approached, her mind racing. Her instincts told her to keep calm, to diffuse whatever this was, but the tension in his posture made it clear this was not going to be a routine conversation. The hallway seemed to shrink around her. Staff whispered behind closed doors, eyes wide with fear. Jasmine felt the weight of every injustice she had endured, compacted into a single moment. She couldn't understand what had triggered this. What could make someone in a position of power act with such aggression? And then it happened. A shove, sharp and deliberate, that knocked the cart to the side. Her heart pounded in disbelief. She realized in that instant that this was no longer subtle, no longer a quiet dismissal or a look of disdain. The threat had become real, immediate, and terrifying. Jasmine's breath quickened as Dr. Caldwell advanced. She knew the hospital she had trusted, the corridors she had walked countless times with confidence, were about to become a stage for something unimaginable. Every second stretched like hours, the air thick with anticipation, fear, and the inevitability of confrontation. The world seemed to tilt, and in that hallway, Jasmine faced a reality she had never thought possible. Courage alone might not be enough to survive what was coming. The hallway seemed to freeze. Jasmine's heart hammered as Dr. Caldwell's shadow fell over her, his hand reaching inside his coat with a chilling, deliberate motion. She didn't have time to react. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but the crowded corridor left no room. And then it happened. A loud, sharp sound echoed, 5 gunshots. The world blurred around her as pain tore through her body. Each shot was a jolt, each one a cruel punctuation in a sentence of terror she could never have imagined. Colleagues screamed, patients cried, and the monitors beeped frantically as chaos erupted. Jasmine stumbled, collapsing against the wall. Blood soaked her scrubs, her vision narrowed, but through the haze of pain, she saw faces, fearful, horrified, helpless. The CEO, the man whose power had always been untouchable, stood frozen for a moment, perhaps realizing the gravity of what he had done. The hospital, her home, had become a nightmare. And yet, despite the terror, a spark of awareness ignited within her. Survival wasn't just about escaping the bullets. It was about refusing to let this injustice define her, refusing to be silenced by hatred. Security swarmed the hallway, alarms blaring, but Jasmine's mind was a storm of confusion, disbelief, and determination. In that moment, she understood something essential. The world had witnessed the cruelty of unchecked power, and she, though wounded, had a voice that could expose it. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Jasmine survived, but the experience left scars that ran deeper than any bullet wound. In the days that followed, the hospital was a whirlwind of investigation, media attention, and public outrage. The CEO, once untouchable, faced the full force of accountability, and the world saw a moment of justice rarely witnessed so clearly. For Jasmine, the recovery was physical, yes, but it was also emotional, a process of reclaiming courage and refusing to let fear dictate her life. She returned to work slowly, each step down the familiar corridors a small victory. Patients who had once relied on her care now looked at her with newfound respect, some bringing flowers or words of gratitude that felt heavier with meaning than ever before. Colleagues who had ignored or dismissed her began to reconsider the subtle biases that had allowed injustice to fester. Jasmine's voice, once quiet in the shadows of authority, became a beacon for others who had faced similar discrimination. This story, though terrifying, is a reminder that racial injustice can lurk in places of power, often invisible until it erupts in shocking ways. It is also a testament to resilience, the ability to survive, to fight back, and to demand change. Jasmine's courage forced an institution to confront its failings, proving that even in the darkest moments, accountability and truth can prevail. How many more ordinary days are hiding injustice in plain sight? How long will it take for systemic racism to be confronted at every level? Reflect, share, and act. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.